about 2 days of flying. Had a really cool layover in the middle. That got me into Panama City, which was insane right from the moment I got out of the airport. Like back to this feeling of being in like a different world, like stepping on a plane and getting off in a different world. I can still remember it, like driving through the city with this taxi driver. He didn't speak like any English, so good thing I practiced a little bit of Spanish to get like basic communication. But it was insane. Like, the city is huge. I never would have known that about Panama City. I never knew it was such a big city. But it's like, I might be wrong on this, but I feel like it makes Toronto look small. Like, this is just skyscrapers everywhere. The city feels like it goes on forever. It like wraps around the coast. You just see coastline and like hills in the distance and like almost like mountains like in the distance. And there's a massive park in the middle of the city. Funny enough, this park is actually linked with a park in Cleveland, Ohio. So the birds that spend their summers in the United States, specifically the ones that go to this park in Cleveland or wherever, they migrate and they winter in Panama in Central America. And so this park, this metropolitan park is what it's called. It's meant to be like a sanctuary for wildlife, but specifically for these migratory birds. So they have somewhere to winter, some habitat for wintering, which is pretty cool. It's pretty big. It's like this big jungle in the middle of the city. So I spent a few days at this really cool hostel, checked out a rooftop bar, went to this like old part of town where it's like a huge party scene, but in the day it's just this really beautiful historical Casco Viejo is the neighborhood, I guess, that it's called. And after this I was ready to get out of the city. It can be a lot, like especially the traffic, the noise, the people. Like, it's so many people, so many cars. Even just crossing the street is like pretty insane. So I booked a trip to go to these islands called San Blas. There are hundreds of these small little islands right off the coast of Panama. And they're actually like a stepping stone. People use these islands as like a gateway into Colombia. I just went to these islands, just relaxed. It was these white sand beaches and like crystal clear water, insanely clear water, like so blue. And there's people that live out there. There's an indigenous culture that lives out there. They actually have their own language, different than Spanish, but they still speak Spanish and a little bit of English because there is like a big tourism economy out there as well. There's a lot of trips that take people out there, and there are people living out there. It's crazy even just to imagine, like, what do they do for food? What do they do for water? What do they do for waste management? Like, this like island you can walk around in 10 minutes in the middle of the ocean, and there's people living out there. There's this indigenous culture that's just been living out there. So, they must have a way of doing it. They must have a system. But a few days on San Blas was like super chill and got me ready for some more stimulation. So the next morning I went to a town called Anton Valley, but it's funny because you really need the Spanish pronunciation, Valle de Anton, which I didn't really know how to pronounce it properly, and I ended up in the wrong city, but that's a whole different story. I got to Valle de Anton and it was insane. It's like this mountain town. Everybody's just like super fit. Everybody's like riding bicycles everywhere you go. There's like hiking all over the place. A lot of people go there for hiking. It's really, really amazing. Just this town in the middle of a valley, or actually a crater of a volcano. That town was such an experience. The hostel was so social. People from all over the world, just like really cool people. It's not as on the map yet, so people kind of have to hear about this place. It's still kind of like a word of mouth kind of place. So it gets this really cool crowd. There's a bunch of hikes you can do that are within walking distance. So most people spend their days going out hiking the mountains. And it's insane the views that you get from the top. Like, you can see out forever. You can see into the valley. You can see over all these hills. You're like walking on cliffs. Like, sometimes it's like it's just a little bit wider than the space you need for your feet. And then it just drops off into this cliff. It's really crazy to hike mountains like this. At one point, I remember I was hiking this mountain. Got so lost. The trails aren't always very well marked, so it's easy to get lost, and there's trails that are like not the main hiking trails, so you can end up all over the place. There's these trails that these locals take. Some of them like lead right into people's backyards. I actually got like chased out of a yard by like some dogs at one point because I followed the wrong trail. So this day I got so lost. I was walking for hours. I don't know where, all over these like mountain villages. People were like turning heads, looking at me like I was not supposed to be there. It was like very uncommon for them to see like a foreigner just walking through these villages. I don't know how I ended up here, but eventually I found a way out, a way back to the village. I had to do one more summit to get back to the village, go over like this one summit. And as soon as I got up to the top, we had a storm. So I was hiding out in this shelter, I think where people wait for the bus. And everything was good. It was just raining. I was waiting. And then I started seeing lightning. And this was a metal box on the top of a summit of a mountain. So I started freaking out. It's like all the places you shouldn't be when there's lightning, high up and surrounded by metal. And here I am in both. So I start running through the jungle. I'm still lost, because the path is now splitting up in a bunch of different ways. And so I'm still lost. I'm running through this jungle. There's streams popping up out of nowhere. There's these massive puddles that just appeared in minutes. It's like downpouring rain. So much of a rush, and like not the good kind of rush. but eventually the rain cleared up a little bit. I found my way. I got back into town. It was all good. But I've definitely learned my lesson about hiking in the jungles and the mountains of Panama. After the valley, I went to a beach town called Santa Catalina. And this is another town that's not so much on the map yet, but it's interesting to see it now right before this boom. A lot of the people still don't even speak that much English. I remember eating at this restaurant and some people didn't speak any Spanish. They walked in, they tried to talk, and they ended up having to leave because they couldn't communicate at all, and these owners didn't speak any English. And in that same restaurant, I ordered something, I didn't totally know what it was off the menu, and ended up I got an entire lobster on this plate. It was the best seafood I've ever had, and so it's still not so touristic yet, but it's getting there. You can feel things are starting to change in this town. They just recently got an ATM, so things are starting to change in this town. The town has a few different beaches, really well known for surfing. Most people that go there are going there because they already do surf or they want to learn how to surf. Some people just want to enjoy the beach. But there's also a national park about an hour and a half boat ride away from one of the beaches. And the boat ride out there is like one of the best parts, I would say. Like, you're driving this boat along this coast that's just got like cliffs shooting out of the coast, like covered in jungle, rocks, massive rocks everywhere. And it goes on forever. And like some massive waves at times. Like, our boat was getting air actually at times. We were like launching up into the air. It was pretty wild. And occasionally we would stop and there's just dolphins jumping out of the water all around us, and you can see them swimming in the water. The water is so clear, they get close enough sometimes you can actually see them for just a moment, but you can see these dolphins. And there's fish that jump out of the water. The dolphins are jumping out after the fish, like trying to eat the fish. They take you to like 3 different snorkel spots, and you're swimming with like sharks underneath you. These sharks are like, some of them as big as my arm span, and all kinds of fish. You can be in like a school of fish, like just surrounded by them. It didn't seem like anybody else really noticed this, but I was getting stung like all the time. I saw like one real decent jellyfish, but besides that, there were these like, they looked like little specks in the water, but if you let them get really close and you'd look at them, they were like a little jellyfish, but like maybe like a centimeter. Like, they were so small. And I finally realized that's what's making my body sting all over. Not really badly sting, but like enough to feel it. And oh, the snorkeling was insane. Like coral reefs, all these colors of fish, these sharks, sea turtles. It's insane. It's really a lot of biodiversity still on this island. There was even a massive crocodile on the island. It would poke its head out of the swamp and you could see it, like its head right there. You could stand like right by the edge of the swamp. There was a small barrier, like you shouldn't go any further, but you could stand right there and look at this crocodile. And then it would just put its head underwater and it would just disappear. But like, it's still right there. It's just underwater, but the way they camouflage it would just disappear. It was really cool. So after Santa Catalina, I went to this pretty famous town in Panama. Town has its own feel, its own energy, and everybody talks about this. Everybody talks about how you can feel it in Boquete. It's like chilled out. The people are chilled out, and it's the coldest place I've ever been in Panama. So I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it. But still not cold. Still like 20 degrees most of the time. It's almost like an Anton Valley, but like much bigger. Still not so big, but way bigger than the valley. So I stayed at this really cool hostel. I met some amazing people. I spent days hanging out with people. To be honest, it's not so common that that happens when people are moving hostels every day. When I'm moving hostels every few days, it's not really common that you find people to really connect with, but it really happens here. This hostel I stayed in, this was different. It was all these backpackers, but it's like they're all just living in this house together for just like a short period of time. It was really unique, the feeling of this hostel, and it really brought people together. And so there's a lot of hiking around Boquete. And, you know, normally I would be all over that. I'd be out hiking every day like I was in the valley. But actually, the first night I got here, I had a fall with my backpack. I rolled an ankle and I fell on this stone, but with all the weight of my backpack, I fell like really hard. And, you know, this small stone got like lodged in my knee. It wasn't like a big stone, but it was so deep in, it just looked like a scab on the surface of my skin. It looked like just a small little bump, and it was dark out. Couldn't really see so well. But when I looked at it, it was like a rock. And I'm standing on the side of the road. I pulled this stone out of my knee. There's a hole in my knee, and it wasn't even bleeding right away, so I could look right into my knee in this little hole. It was so weird. I almost freaked out, but I had to like get myself together, and like I'm still lost. So like, okay, get to this hostel, get myself up, start walking. I ended up getting into this other hostel. It's like semi-famous in Boquete. It's this castle, not like an authentic castle, I wouldn't say. It's more fancy, more like a resort. It's really beautiful. Rolled into reception. The receptionist was super helpful. She called me a cab, let me sit on the couch, saw that I was like in a state, I needed some help, and then she was pretty insistent that I like clean up my hole. The taxi can wait. Yeah, it's so funny looking back at this. There's this like fancy boutique hostel, and everybody that's walking by like the common area of the reception, they just see this like mangled backpacker using like a Leatherman knife to like cut up bandage and like blood all over the place. Like, oh, it's so funny looking back on this. So, you know, no hiking in Boquete. There's this famous volcano hike everybody does. People that don't even hike do this hike, and it's like 10 hours. Crazy high elevation gain. Like, it's like cold at the top of this mountain. Like, jackets and pants and like sweaters and like hats, and still cold at the top of this. The highest point in Panama, actually. And like total amateurs, people that don't go hiking, are going out at midnight, hiking for like 5 hours just to get to the summit to watch the sunrise, and then hiking back down. It's really inspiring, actually, what people will do with the right motivation. And I actually found a tour company that would take me out to the top of the volcano. It was really an interesting day. It was being in the clouds, and like the sky would open up, blue skies for a little patch for like 20 seconds, and you would just see clouds like rushing over the peaks of these mountains, and then everything would just go gray again. Crazy. I've never seen anything like that in my life. We stopped at a farm on the way down that was like very fancy. It was also a hotel, it was also a restaurant, and it was really beautiful. From there we could see actually out to the ocean. You're still very high up in the volcano, so you could see all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. And on sunny days, when there's no clouds, you could actually see the Atlantic Ocean as well. You could see both oceans from this point, which I guess kind of says a lot about how narrow Panama really is. You know, you can go up in elevation to this volcano and you can see both oceans from the same spot. And you know, one other thing Boquete is really famous for is their coffee. They've got a bunch of different coffee farms. Some of them do their entire process locally, some export their beans to places like Germany, really all over the world. So I went on a coffee tour. It was crazy informative. I could do a whole other rant just about what I learned at this coffee farm. There's so much behind this industry, but one thing, just to wrap this up super quick, when you're buying coffee, what to look for is direct trade. There can be a lot of corruption in the industry where there's a lot of money in coffee, but it kind of stays on the top. It doesn't go down to the farmers, to the workers. And it's really insane the wages that some of these workers make, like maybe a few dollars a day. Some places in the world, less than $1 a day. And they're working like full days in the sun, picking these coffee beans, working on these farms. So, there's fair trade, which is great. There's all these other certifications, which are great. But the one you really want to be looking for, the one that's guaranteeing that all the money goes and stays in the farm, the small farms, and goes to the workers, is direct trade coffee. So, for all you people out there that want to conscientiously buy coffee, direct trade is what you're looking for. And a little side note that was really interesting as well, when you buy from local farms, you'll get a lot more flavor, because one of the downfalls of corporations mass producing their coffee and getting their coffee from hundreds of different farms, and they need all the coffee to taste the same because they need every bag to taste the same. They need a consistent product. So they actually roast a lot of the flavor out of the beans. So what you get is burnt tasting coffee, and a lot of the world has just gotten used to burnt tasting coffee, and that's how we think coffee tastes. But you get coffee from these smaller farms, and I can tell you firsthand, you try light roast and even medium roast, and sometimes it tastes more like tea than coffee, the flavors that are in this coffee. So it really does make a difference. So the last part of my trip in Panama took me to a place called Bocas del Toro. I'd say Bocas is one of the most famous places in Panama. Everybody that you talk to has either been here or is planning on coming here. It's pretty famous, actually. And there's a good reason for that. Getting out here, driving through cloud forests, and going from mountains and jungle into coastline, and people living on the water, like houses on the water. And so, then you take a boat ride out to the main island, which is pretty big, actually, decently sized island. There's a whole city out here. There's a bunch of people living out here. There's tarantulas that just walk through the street into these little holes hiding on the side of the road. Pretty wild. Yeah, it's a really unique place out here, very different than the rest of the mainland. It's on the Caribbean coast, so you get a lot of Caribbean influence, actually. You can notice it in the food, but also just in the pace and the tempo. Everybody's kind of on island time, if you're familiar with that term. Everything is just a bit slowed down, chilled out. Everybody's just a little bit more carefree, a little bit more relaxed. And that's for the locals and the people that come here. Everybody's just chill, friendly, wanting to connect, wanting to enjoy. And there's also a lot of things to do here. There's jungles you can hike through. There's bat caves. There's surfing all over the place, all these different beaches. And there's a huge party scene here as well. There's actually like a massive day party every Friday that takes you like island hopping. Actually, I did go to this party, and it was crazy, like all day, like 10 hours, I think, of people just dancing, smiling. Like, I'd have my eyes shut dancing. Every time I'd open my eyes and look around, I'd just see people smiling and just like so happy. Everybody's talking to each other. Everybody's just enjoying each other. It really was fun. It was beautiful, actually. A really beautiful environment, beautiful energy. Pretty wild as well, but like the way everybody was just connected, the way everybody was just happy, it was really a beautiful space to be around in that way. Now, it was funny, even out on this dance floor, I've got like an open wound in my knee, like dancing around. But I was dancing, getting so into it. Everybody was coming up to me. People thought I was like high on mushrooms or MDMA or both, and they wanted some. And I can promise you I wasn't. I was just really having fun, enjoying, and feeling the music. So anyways, just wrapping up my time on this island, getting ready actually tomorrow morning to start the journey into Nicaragua. Got about 2 days of busing with a layover in Costa Rica, and then it's on to the next adventure, on to the next step, the next part of this journey. It's been such an amazing place. You know, I didn't really know anybody that had been here before I came. I had like no idea what to expect. It was really unknown territory. I can say after spending just a few weeks here, this place is amazing. It has so much to offer, from the oceans, the islands, the beaches, to the mountains, like truly mountains, and has it all. It's a really amazing landscape, and the people, you know, it's like so friendly with each other, so friendly to the backpackers, and there's a big backpacker community. It's actually, once I got here, I realized there's actually a lot of people that come here and do backpacking. It's funny, I'd never heard of it. I'd never met anyone that had been here, but since being here, it's, you know, this is a real destination. A lot of people come to this place, and for good reason. It's, you know, there's so much to explore, there's so much beauty to experience, and it's really an amazing place.